All right, guys. Hello. Please do not let me interrupt you. Keep eating. All that. Welcome. It's so wonderful to see all of you. Who has been to one of these before, to a Hippo lecture? All right. Then I have nothing to say whatsoever because it's great. So I feel like everybody. It's awesome. So all I want to do is fill you in on where the story ended last time. If you remember, Harold Bly Tornado is a professor at the fictional University of Toulouse who has discovered the lost history of Pullman. And where he ended last episode was he's getting ready to unveil this whole secret, right? Count Ken and the Kibbe Dome, the underground archive, all that. That's where we'll pick up him talking about the official history, which has really kind of been distorted, etc. Please remember, too, there's two timelines as the story takes place. There's Harold Bly Tornado on the ground at Bruised Books, narrating the lost history of Pullman, which today will take you back into the 1300s and all that. And there's also that story, in the story, there's also him in the shop itself in real time. So today you'll hear a broken narrative in basically two parts. The story itself, and at one point when the girl at the front desk, who we just was briefly introduced last time, right? She told him, hey, can you get off the floor? It's kind of weird. So that will continue out throughout all 6 of these episodes into the spring. Without further ado, thank you for being here. If you'll give a warm welcome for Grace and Hayden to do the kind of official introduction for tonight.
So, how do you feel about rabbits?
What?
How do you feel about elephants?
What?
Well, I've just been reading all of that 14th century Pullman stuff, by Dr. Harold Bly Tornado.
Well, Dr. Tornado, why didn't you mention that? I love it.
Love what?
I love it. I love all of it.
Great.
The official history of Pullman, Washington goes as follows. I beg your forgiveness for the brevity and Cliff Notes-like version of these details, but they are presented as such because they are, 1, easily accessible to anyone with an internet connection, 2, only relevant as context to the story, and 3, most importantly, false. If false is too strong a word for you, then perhaps you prefer distorted. Certainly distorted is a charitable way to describe the monumental cover-up that took place in the wake of the great cataclysm of August 26, 1887, which conveniently completely wiped out Old Pullman and its memory but 8 months before official Pullman was incorporated on April 11, 1888. The long history of the area dates to First Nation Native Americans, namely the Nez Perce and the Palouse people. Other tribes, such as the Confederated Tribes of the Yakama Nation, the famous Chief Kamaikan's name is conspicuous all throughout Pullman. The Spokane Tribe and the Coeur d'Alene Tribe are indigenous to the greater Palouse region. European Americans established Whitman County in 1871. A decade later, in 1881, the town of Three Forks was founded. Three Forks was renamed Pullman 3 years later in 1884 in honor of American industrialist George Pullman. In 1888, Pullman was incorporated 1 year before the admission of Washington into the United States of America, and 2 years before the 1890 founding of the Agricultural College, Experiment Station, and School of Science of the state of Washington. This long and bumbling title gave way to the much more elegant Washington State College in 1905. In 1959, WSC became WSU, Washington State University. If one were to ask, but I want a history of the town, and you're telling me about the school, am I to infer the school and the town are synonymous, interchangeable? Basically, yes. Of the 33,000 people who call Pullman home, as I write these words in 2025, a significant majority have direct WSU ties. The university is the largest employer in town, and many of those who do not work for the school are alumni. Everyone roots for the Cougs or hates them. There's no hate like the one sprung from the suffocation of an omnipresent entity. And one only has to compare Pullman in February or October, bustling in the way true college towns do, the bars, cafes, and thrift shops full of people and loud conversations, with Pullman in June or July, ghost town. Pullman in the summertime is, depending upon one's preferences, a post-apocalyptic wasteland or paradise. Bavarian German immigrant farmers arrived in Whitman County in droves in the late 19th century and brought with them their farming expertise, their love of beer, and their Catholicism. They built the grand and gorgeous neo-Gothic Cathedral St. Boniface's in Uniontown. Red brick exterior plus a bell tower and statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary near the steeple, buttercream columns inside the church, interspersed amidst handcrafted wooden pews that look great and smell great, and the floor is cold in a way that lends itself to a sense of sanctity. There is iconography aplenty inside. The tabernacle is centered, the communion rail intact. The oldest consecrated church in the state of Washington is rightly termed Notre Dame de la Palusse, and plays a major role in the real history of Pullman, Old Pullman, especially its connection to the Great Cataclysm and St. Gertrude's Benedictine Monastery on the Camas Prairie in Cottonwood, Idaho. Pullman suffered a major flood in March of 1910 and another devastating one in 1948. Scores of WSC young men and women served during the First and Second World Wars as soldiers and nurses. By mid-century, the only competition for WSU in terms of notoriety here were the oceans of rich farmland, canola and lentils and chickpeas and barley and so much wheat that had long defined the region, and which led National Geographic in 1982 to run an article entitled A Paradise called the Palouse. 1982, the same year Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, the town's second largest employer and one established by a WSU grad, was founded. The National Lentil Festival, live from Rainy Park, dates to some point in the 1980s too. When you leave Idaho and cross into Washington on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, the first sign that greets you reads, "Welcome to Whitman County, the nation's leading producer of wheat." Pullman is a town of 4 hills: Sunnyside, Military, College, and Pioneer. Its elevation is 2,500 feet. A river runs through it, Paradise Creek. That, too, like so much here, connects Pullman to Moscow and trickles alongside the Bill Chipman Bike Trail. The climate, in technical terms, is warm summer Mediterranean. That's nice because the Wall Street Journal once compared Pullman, Moscow to Tuscany, plus ice cream socials. The summers here are marvelous. Sometimes you can swim at Hayden State Park's Lake Chacolette, aka the Great Palouse Sea, even through mid-September. But then October and November are right around the corner, and soon it's sunset at 3:58 p.m. Winter sets in, and you better like skiing and sledding and ice skating and shoveling your driveway and binge-watching TV indoors and walking outdoors in temps 10 below but plus wind chill minus 30. It's cold and dark and ice and snow into March, some years even into April. People spend their Pullman college years studying, partying, and watching WSU sports. Etsy Bravo, the Coug, and the Emporium pass for nightlife here. You can also watch sports and drink at the bar My Office, which is problematic for foreigners who do not understand the invitation. "Let's go to my office for a drink" means pub, not place of employment. If you live in Pullman as an adult and have a family, it's send the kids to Kamiak, Sunnyside, or Franklin Elementary. I might be missing a few others. I don't have kids, so I'm not sure. I know they all come together at Lincoln Middle School before entering Pullman High. You shop at the Palouse Mall in Moscow, hang out at Rainy Park Pool in summertime, and watch the 4th of July fireworks at Sunnyside Park. Pullman has a lot of good sports programs for kids and adults alike. You go trick-or-treating on all 4 hills depending upon where you live. There's always a house or two that will pass out apples and carrots in lieu of candy, along with a brief sermon on it's never too early to develop healthy eating habits. There's always a house that leaves all its lights on with an owner who looks utterly perplexed. Kids in costumes have come knocking at his door. You drive an hour or more into North Idaho to hunt, fish, or camp and visit Spokane if you are in need of a larger city. Seattle is 5 hours to the west, and many people will tell you they are from the west side. They will do this unprompted and sometimes multiple times within the same conversation. People are still bitter about the Supersonics leaving for Oklahoma City. They root for the Mariners, the Seahawks, but especially the Cougs. If there's one thing about Pullman that's universal, it's that: go Cougs. All this is so lovely and sweet and nice, almost wrapped in a handsome blue bow. Unfortunately, so much of this narrative is completely false. Now that you know the official story, if you haven't already, you will see over the course of however long this takes, how much has been whitewashed, distorted, and covered up. Much of this stems from the Great Cataclysm of August 26, 1887. Please see other official founding dates of surrounding important towns in the Palouse. Moscow, 1887. Palouse Town, 1888. Uniontown, 1890. Colton, 1890. It all begins and ends with the Great Cataclysm of 1887. And once you know... Sorry, she said. Am I bothering you? Sorry, she said again. She was standing, hands on hips, at the aisle's far edge, basically in the middle passage between all the aisles at Bruised Books. I'm still on the floor. I haven't moved at all. She started again, this time looking down as she readjusted her hair tie. My friend, my two friends wanted me to ask you if like I could get a picture of you, if like that would be okay. I just kept looking at her without saying a word. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was simply caught off guard and didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Yeah, so she said, having stepped 1 foot into my aisle. My friends, Allie and Harper, they're like both in this sorority, and they both really, really like inspirational stories and like motivational memes. And they told me that just like what you're doing, it sounds amazing. The fact, she continued, that you're like so open and brave about bringing awareness to mental health is just, she put her hands out in front, her palms up. She even shook her head side to side twice. It's just, it's amazing. So could I maybe get a picture of you for them? Sure, I finally managed, sitting up. No, she said, waving her hands. Please don't get up. Could you just go back to laying down like you were before? Allie said she would like the photo to be in your activist look. Is that okay? Yeah, sure, I said, slumping back down. What's your name? I feel like we've been talking for a while. I haven't asked you your name. My apologies. I'm Allison Harper, she said. Allison Harper? Yep, she said, pirouetting into a hands outstretched pose and wearing a huge smile. That's me, ta-da! Your name is Allison Harper and you have a friend named Allie and a friend named Harper? Uh-huh. But, she said, now stepping back into the middle passage, I go by Allie. Allie spelled with a Y. So you can just like call me Allie. Harry, I'm Harry. What? Like Prince Harry? She said, emitting a small squeal as she briefly shimmied side to side. Yes, I said, exactly like that. She twirled around and took the photo and went back to the front desk. I had paused the recording. I unpaused it. I was saying before that once you know, you can't unknow, can't not know ever again. This is chapter 2 of the Lost History of Pullman and where our story really begins. In the 1330s, a Florentine man and one-time companion of Dante Alighieri named Pietro Mangiatore de Zucche, Italian for Peter Pumpkin Eater, woke up in a full body sweat after a restless night of sleep. For the past 8 months, he had every 17th day of the month dreamt the exact same dream 3 times in a row. This morning was the 18th of the month, and it had happened again, and he could ignore it no longer. In the dream, he stood alone in an open field under a cloudless blue sky. Soon a rabbit would appear and tell him to, quote, walk until you feel your inner elbows hurt. The first time he dreamt this, it made no sense. Now, it was as rational a statement as, if you add 2 to 2, you have 4. For as soon as he took his first step, he would sink slowly into the earth, and the sky would slightly darken. Each successive step sunk him further into the earth under ever worsening weather conditions. It was not long until he was buried up to his waist in mushy, mucky earth, feeling himself sinking further down as down from the sky came the rain in torrents. Lightning bolts, splintering trees, heavy hail like stones, a whipping, battering wind. It got worse and worse as he sunk further on down. Only when he placed his elbows in the ground and began to walk on his elbows did the weather condition and his lot improve. Soon he was out of the quagmire completely, and the sun was once more shining in a high blue sky. So long as he kept walking on his elbows, everything was fine. It was a long journey from the center of the field to the cliff of destiny, and the rabbit was certainly correct. To reach it, you have to press on until his inner elbows throbbed from the exertion. Every time he reached the cliff of destiny, the same thing happened. Alexander the Great, Cyrus the Great, Virgil, the emperors Trajan, Marcus Aurelius, and Gratianus, Socrates, Boethius, St. Augustine of Hippo, the Frankish king Clovis, Homer, Charlemagne, and Julius Caesar would show up and commence a free-for-all fistfight. Only St. Augustine did not participate. He sat on the edge of the cliff, scribbling notes in a book entitled Chaos, the City of Man. The book was pistachio-colored green and lettering gold. Every time, the Emperor Gratianus emerged victorious, throwing his opponents off the cliff of destiny one by one. Socrates, who maintained a live commentary as people were dispatched, stroking his chin, saying, now that's interesting. And now, I do wonder, was always thrown off last. Unlike the others who Gratianus picked up by the scruff and launched off the cliff, Socrates was always bade to come to the cliff's edge by Gratianus with the phrase, Socrates, come look at this. He then received a nice firm kick in the hindquarters, and away he went. At that point, every time Gratianus turned to St. Augustine and said, are you happy now? Meh. Augustine would reply, that wasn't that good. Not that good? Not that good? You think you could have done better? Yeah, probably. If I wanted to, yeah, I think I could. Gratianus would then scrunch his nose and wag his finger and jump off the cliff, sprouting wings and flying off towards the sun. Augustine would disappear into thin air. Pier Pietro Mangiatore di Zucche would wake up. On the 18th day of the month, he finally had had enough. And so he went into town, and then left town, and then walked to another town, and walked through that town, and then left it. And then once more he was on the road to another town, which he eventually reached and walked through and left until he arrived at the hermitage of an old wise woman deep in a foreboding forest near absolutely 0 towns. He asked her the meaning of this dream. Could she interpret it? She said she could, but first he would have to pass a few tests to prove he was worthy. Was he up for it? Anything, he replied. I'm quite eager, as you can see. Good, she replied. Then you'll have to complete the following tasks in the following order. First, you must lay on the forest floor face down for 4 days and 4 nights, not speaking a word, and eating nothing but the bugs that come within the vicinity of your open mouth. Your mouth must remain open the entire time. I will permit you a rest period of 131 seconds every 10th hour, and I suggest you use it primarily for drinking water. Second, you must punch yourself in the face 47 times in a row. Third, you must tell me I'm beautiful and ask me to marry you. I will refuse you, but you still must ask. Fourth, you must massage my feet and tell me that I look young and attractive. Fifth, and finally, I will fill a very large basin to the top with live rabbits, and you must sink down into the basin, down to the very bottom, pretending to bathe yourself with the rabbits. Use them creatively in the style of soaps and rags. Once you have done these things, I will tell you the meaning of your dream. Mangiatore di Zucche completed all the tasks in a manly and efficient manner. When he was done, he said, "What is the meaning of my dream?" The woman stared at him blankly. Well, she kept staring ahead, saying nothing, until finally bursting into tears. Mangiatore di Zucche felt his shoulders slump. He heard himself exhale. You don't know, do you? No, she said through heavy tears. No, please don't be mad at me. I'm just an old, lonely woman desperate for touch and a nice word or two. Your foot massage, thank you. For those brief 6 hours, I felt alive again. Thank you. You're welcome, but why the rabbit bath? I don't know, I like rabbits. But why have me wash myself in a bath of rabbits? She shook her head side to side and began to cry intensely once more. You really don't know, do you? Okay, she said. Okay, hold on. She held her exhaled breath at a good and steady pace for at least 10 seconds. Hold on, because I think rabbit baths are the secret to a healthy composition, the cure for insomnia, and a way to prove to people, even just yourself, that you're willing to sacrifice it all for feudal lord, family, and the king himself. That's first. Now, as the meaning of your dream, I think it means you're supposed to travel to a faraway land. Where? Far, far away. But where? I think you're supposed to leave Florence and head west until you reach the sea. I think the sea itself is not meant to hold you. I should cross the sea? To where? I don't know. What if there's nothing out there except more and more sea? I just die in the middle of endless water. That's not possible. Not possible. It's not possible. The very existence of a shoreline means boundaries in all directions. Water cannot exist without a shore, banks, endpoints, framing. You can't just have endless water extending out into infinity, into nothingness. There are no infinite regresses. A little turtles I'm fine with, but it's not turtles all the way down. There's another shore somewhere out there. You could still die in the middle of the sea if it's large enough. I have no idea about that. It's certainly possible. I don't know, but I think you should go. Mangiatore di Zucche thanked her and left. He departed Florence and headed west. He made it to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, some kilometers from the very city center of La Rochelle. A young woman named Marie avait un petit agneau, French for Mary had a little lamb, asked him what he was doing, and he told her, and then she asked him if he would consider taking her on his mission with him. He said he would, but only if they were married. She led him back into town. She introduced him to her family as a brave and valiant man of adventure. Her father, a duke, whose family's greatest source of pride were 2 ancestors who had accompanied St. Louis IX, the monk king, to the Holy Land during the 7th Crusade, invited Mangiatore di Zucche to dine with the family that night. After dinner, he asked her father for his daughter's hand in marriage. Her father consented on the condition that Mangiatore di Zucche take a long and thorough bath in a vat of rabbits I keep behind the cow pen. Mangiatore di Zucche took his second rabbit bath in the past few months and married Marie the next morning in a nuptial mass at the Church of Our Holy Savior, a church whose foundation dated to the mid-12th century. The dowry was generous. Gold and precious stones in 2025 money that would exceed $17 million. An estate in Brittany with a 104-room castle and 34 servants. 9 rocket launchers, a Mars rover prototype, 65 pistols in the Colt and Wesson style that become popular in the American West some 500 years in the future, and the crown jewel, an Olympic-class ocean liner prototype that the famous Titanic would copy/plagiarize practically feature by feature 600 years later. 880 feet in length, 180-foot height from the keel to the top of the funnels, 4 funnels, 11 decks, a 52.8-ton displacement, max speed 25 knots, but preferred cruising speed between 21 and 23. Marie's father, mon mec c'est quoi de je ne sais pas, cher pote petit agneau, hey dude, what's up, I don't know, my dear friend, little lamb, is considered by those who know to be the greatest adventure in human history. Weapons, check. Luxury sea travel, check. Space travel in the 14th century, check. It's rumored, as though yet unconfirmed, that Sherput Petit Agneau attained self-propelled low Earth orbit by way of a rocket and satellite system he designed in the French countryside circa 1336. What is for certain is that later that decade he sent a probe to, today called Hippocamp, one of Neptune's moons. 7 centuries before the American astronomer Mark Showalter discovered it in the summer of 2013. Sherput Petit Agneau's name for the moon was J'ai besoin d'aller aux toilettes 4. I really got to go to the bathroom 4. That Sherput's Petit Agneau's accomplishments have been suppressed, and his name practically erased from history is one of the many reasons I have set out to write the lost history of Pullman. The newlyweds, along with a crew of 60 men and 42 servants, departed from the French coast sometime in the mid-1330s, heading northwest. When, later on, the 102 person crew landed in the year 1336 or 1337 at what is today, 2025, Port St. Lucie, Florida, more precisely a few miles north, a little past Fort Pierce on a stretch of sand called Pepper Park Beach, they became the second Europeans to set foot on North American soil and the first on what became the modern United States of America. The first in North America since Iceland's own Leif Erikson landed at L'Anse aux Meadows, Canada, called by the Vikings Vinland Hitgoda 330-some years earlier in 1001. The Water Rabbit Expedition, as the group had taken to calling themselves, arrived in the future USA 156 years prior to Christopher Columbus and 177 years before Ponce de Leon landed in Florida in 1513. The Water Rabbit Expedition arrived in Florida a whole 2 centuries and 3 decades before the establishment of what the traditional narrative calls, quote, the oldest continuously occupied settlement in the continental U.S., St. Augustine, Florida, 1565. Little is known about the expedition's 11-month, some say as long as 15-month journey from Florida to the Pacific Northwest. Owing to the multitudinous honorary titles bestowed upon mandatory Dizuke by First Nation tribes as they moved west, Grand Silent Chieftain, the man whose stars stooped down to greet, and Tremor of the Eastern Thunderlands, there is no doubt the party was well received by Native Americans, without question to an even higher degree than Lewis and Clark in their famous expedition of 1804-1806. Upon arriving in what became and what is today Pullman, Washington in the year 1340, the Water Rabbit Party reported their net worth, complete assets in possession as they called it, as follows. Gold, gems, viable currency conglomerated, uncountable, undefinable. Mars rover prototype, undefined. 56 pistols, worth 71 days' wages, 710 soldi. Ocean liner, undefined, estimated at 25,000 florins. 16 elephants, 1,000 days' wages. 590 beaver pelts and 702 buffalo skins, both undefined. 426,200 board feet of timber, 17 florins. 385 horses, 12,000 soldi. Pottery, art, building tools, and other assorted miscellany, uncountable, undefined, signed, Barnabas Barney Yotuchi, bookkeeper, in the year of our Lord 1340 on the 7th of November. Miscellaneous items and possessions include, but are not limited to, 400 pounds of banana juice concentrate, 14 BMX bicycles, 13 aluminum field ball sticks, 4 cannons, 68 Bengal tigers, 406 cannonballs, 19 Rottweilers, 107 species of grass seed, 14 pianos, 605 field balls, and other non-specified field ball equipment. One needn't be told, for even a cursory glance at the above itinerary makes it clear that Mandatory Dizuki and his party were not only the first Europeans in what are the modern-day United States of America, but that many inventions historians have for a long time credited to future men came from these unsung heroes. Not simply the ocean liner and Mars rover prototype. These are properly credited to Sherput Petit Agneau, who graciously gifted them to his son-in-law. but the introduction of elephants and Rottweilers into the New World, concentrated juice product formula, cannons and their projectiles, pianos, and BMX bicycles. That the real history of these inventions is, quote, hiding in plain sight, is a sad but true reality. BMX bicycles, but one example among so many, supposedly invented the sport of bicycle motocross in 1970s California. The truth, well, take a ticket and queue up in line. The PlayStation 2 video game MX 2002 featuring Ricky Carmichael paid homage to the truth, when in one level's multiplayer mode, one could jump a wall and go off into an assumed to be restricted area and eventually fall off a cliff, falling down and down through a purplish cloud-eater abyss until restart. There's a direct, although hidden to all but the most intrepid players, tip of the cap to the Water Rabbit Pensions Party for doing trick jumps off bluffs along the Mississippi River and jumping off the bike midair for a dive into the water. This was called probing the nothingness. Well, players of MX 2002 could also probe the nothingness, but consider, perhaps only 1 to 2% of players even knew how to find this feature within the game, that it was connected to real events in American history, and the first European expedition across America in 14th century was discovered by a grand total of people reading one, me. Consider the style with which the Water Rabbit Party traversed the continental U.S. 16 elephants pulling the ocean liner like sled dogs in Alaska. So inspired by the sight of the travelers, they made up the famous song When the Saints Go Marching In, impromptu. In the present day, the first and second choruses survive as they then sung them, with the 1.5 middle stanza redacted and lost to time. I found the original copy of the sheet music in Vault 9, Box 226 of the Rainy Park Pool Archive. It reads as follows. The chorus, of course, is when the saints go marching in, and when the saints go marching in, oh Lord, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Line 1, when the sun begins to shine, when the sun begins to shine, oh Lord, I want to be in that number when the sun begins to shine. Second line, when that final trumpet calls, oh Lord, I want to be in that number when that final trumpet calls. The redacted 1.5 line reads, and when those elephants pull that boat, and when the elephants pull that boat, O Lord, they pull it across thy glorious creation, when the elephants pull that boat. What more to say of the group's journey across America? Of course, they introduced the horse to America, not the Spaniards, the 15th or 16th centuries. The grand symbol of American freedom and big sky mobility and independent grit is not to be credited to the Spanish, Texas Rangers, Cowboys, or Apache warriors. So much of our daily lives as Americans is thanks to the brave and arduous journey undertaken and successfully completed by Pier Pietro Suzuki, the first High Consul of Pullman, Washington, and America's true founding father. Organic wheatgrass smoothies, cherry pie. The fast food option asked for onion rings, not fries. Onion rings and French fries, obviously, see the immediate previous. Timed watering systems for lawns and larger fields. Sidewalks, industrial-sized garbage bins, chewing tobacco, sunflower seeds as in-pocket snack option, advanced theoretical physics pertaining but not limited to quantum field theory, and the origin of particle masses. The napkin, flat foot-formed shoes designed specifically for athletic training, the swimming pool as distinct from water hole. For all these and so much more, thank you, Your Honor, High Consul Sir Mangiatori Suzuki. Baseball, of course, was also invented by the Water Rabbit Party. Centuries before rounders, Abner Doubleday, and any and all competitive comers and goers. Of course, because please see 13 aluminum field ball sticks in the itemized itinerary provided by Barnabas Barney Yotucci. The rules are similar to what became the American pastime. While the similarities are striking and the debt modern baseball owes to field ball obvious, the games had a few differences as well. 37-inch bats weighing but 10 ounces hitting a sub-4-ounce ball caused regular pyrotechnical shows of power. The longest home run in field ball history was hit by Benedetto Detta Benny Bada Binga Booma Binga Detta in the summer of 1339, when, in what is modern-day Iowa, he connected on a 1,255-foot home run to dead center field. Ambitious empty-the-tank pitchers reached incredible velocities with that sub-4 ball. 105 to 112 miles per hour became commonplace. There were, however, some differences. Unlike in baseball, whose rules one can assume the audience is sufficiently familiar with, field ball allowed for a team to challenge a player from the opposing team to a wrestling match at second base anytime after the 11th inning. Remember, there was 15 innings in field ball. The winner earned his team 8 runs. If a team was losing by more than 10 runs, they could initiate the Aeneas Challenge, whereby one of their pitchers, it could not be a position player, had to recite each line and word in the correct order a passage from Virgil's Aeneid. For 100 seconds in the original Latin, success meant plus 11 runs, failure minus 17. Finally, if a team was down to its final out and final strike, they had the option to choose release the tiger mode. Field ball rules required a live tiger to be kept on the first base side all 15 innings. Understandably enough, release the tiger mode entailed the tiger being released onto the field. If nobody panicked, meaning a panic reading of less than 4.26 on a 10-point scale, the team down to their last out earned 3 runs and a fresh inning back to 0 balls, 0 strikes, 0 outs. Lest one assume reasonably the other team could feign panic, the man with the panic meter, his official title, Freak Out Chill Zone Umpire 4, the 4 signifying nothing whatsoever, was responsible for assigning the Bad Actor Award. Any team that tried to get the meter above 4.26 when the tiger was released was penalized 100 runs. More can be said about the Water Rabbit Party's trip west, and suffice to say they made it to Pullman, settled down, built a community and community ties, this all beginning in autumn 1340. And under the leadership of Pietro Mangiatori de Zucche, the first High Consul of Pullman, and his successors of the Royal House of Pumpkin, its coat of arms, an elephant and a tiger walking beside an ocean liner while field balls and rockets erupted overhead, inaugurated a golden silent age of more than 300 years. That silence is gold is an old American saying that comes directly from this unknown period of American history. If it's not broke, don't fix it, too. For indeed, from about 1340 until 1675, 325 years, the population of Pullman, Washington grew from the Water Rabbit Party plus surrounding First Nation tribes, who, according to oral traditions from the Palouse, circa 1523-27, quote, lived in perfect political land economy harmony as a cohesive integral unit of human flourishing, grew to an apex of 1.76 million people sometime in the late 1630s. Consider, Pullman's population in 1630 was larger than Paris, 430,000, London, 160,000, and Beijing, 1 million combined. Perfect harmony and population growth, field ball becoming something of a national pastime within 40 years of first settlement, peace with neighbors, peace within. The silent golden age, because perhaps another old adage is true too, was not to last. For we all know it came crashing down in the late 1670s. Bacon's rebellion back east in Virginia, the unlikeliest of candidates to drive the first High Consul out of Pullman, he then the 17th in the pumpkin line, stretching back to Mangiatori de Zucche, allowing the usurper Daniel Drillbutton to initiate his ill-fated pumpkin revolt of 1677. Yes, order would be restored in the guise of the champion king Butch Cougarius IV, supporter of the true pumpkin dynasty that had founded Pullman. But the cost was high. More on that soon. So much more on that soon. But a final point in this chapter. Yes, and good for you. Yes, if you had already guessed it. Pullman, for the city's name, because Tiro Uomo was what the rabbit party yelled at the men assisting the elephants whenever they seemed to be getting tired moving across the ocean liner across America. Tiro Uomo. Tiro Uomo. Pool man. Thank you.